Hello, welcome everyone to this seminar about bridging the digital divide in Tanzania. My name is Janet Chapman, Chair of Tanzania Development Trust. So we've been working with Basic Internet and Africa Child projects to try and get better connectivity to rural schools, particularly so that they can participate in some of the webinars that we're organising with Partners in Excellence around school leadership, but also coming up with a new project called Inspiring Girls. I will put the link to that in the chat, so we hope you can join on for that too. So we'd like to start by introducing Sone Asakwe from GSMA, who's going to talk about her recent report around the state of the digital divide in Tanzania. So over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Janet, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Please let me know if you can see my slides.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Yes, so my name is Sunil Sakwe, and I work with the Central Insights Unit at the GSMA's Mobile for Development program. We recently concluded a study on behalf of the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in Tanzania. And the objective of the study was to, one, evaluate the level to which Tanzania has been able to improve social, business, and public administration processes, leveraging digital technologies and digitized data. A second objective was to assess the strength of existing digital foundations, as well as structural barriers within the digital ecosystem. And thirdly, we sought to highlight prospects or opportunities for engagement and support, to amplify ongoing interventions in the country. So to achieve these objectives, we reviewed existing literature and data on the topic. We consulted local stakeholders, including representatives from relevant government agencies. And we also developed case studies to interpret some of our findings. But for the purpose of today's conversation, our focus really will be on the state of digital inclusion in the country. Right. So we observed that the digital policy landscape in Tanzania is steered by Vision 2025, which is influenced by the ruling party's election manifesto and supported by 5-year development plans. The current 5-year development plan places the expansion of digital and frontier technologies at the core for accelerating development of the country's productive industrial sectors. So if we take a look at the figure on the left, figure 1, we can see some key targets there, in terms of the level of mobile internet penetration that the country hopes to achieve by 2026. Also in terms of just looking at the proportion of government institutions that should be connected with at least have a broadband connection. The hope is to grow that from 20% to 70% by 2026. And we did observe some positive signs, signs. So for instance, there are a number of policy reviews that are ongoing in a bid to implement this transformation agenda. A new digital transformation guideline is in the pipeline. There's also a digital economy framework that's in the pipeline as well, to just kind of guide the government's thinking around how to achieve some of these goals. We also observed that the Personal Information Protection Bill was recently passed by Parliament. So those are some really positive signs. You also see on figure 2 to the right that the annual budgetary allocation for ICT development projects seems to have increased in the last 3 years, and that is a positive sign as well. But that notwithstanding, we observe that the country still depends quite heavily on foreign donor collaboration to be able to fund these digitalization projects. Right. So a lot of investment has gone into laying some of these foundations for digitalization. One of the primary priorities that we noticed that the government has taken on board is to expand the national backbone infrastructure, which currently connects all regional headquarters in the country and a few town centers, but we realize that it doesn't necessarily get to the district level. So that's the figure on the left, figure 3. It also shows how it's connected to neighboring countries around Tanzania. When we look at figure 4, we see that there's been steady progress made in recent years in terms of the proportion of the population with access to both mobile and fixed internet connectivity. And so you see, a steady rise from 2016, it's about 40% of the population, up to 54% of the population as at last quarter. And in terms of performance, just comparing it with neighboring countries within the East African region, Tanzania does perform relatively well, compared to others, or at least at par with others. So, for example, estimated internet penetration rate in Kenya is approximately 50% of the population. In Uganda is 55%. In Mozambique, Rwanda, still within the 50% range, just similar to what we see in Tanzania. All right. So, when we take a look at, if you take a look at figure 5, the gray boxes, what we see is that it shows that, just pretty much shows how the proportion of the total population, not covered by either a mobile or a fixed internet connectivity or broadband network has reduced over time. So as at 2017, 59% of the population did not have a broadband coverage. But you see how this has reduced to 19%, as at the last quarter. However, despite this progress, that has been recorded, we observe that several rural communities remain excluded from accessing digital services. So while practically all mobile users living in urban areas in the country are able to access at the very least a 3G connection, about 19% of the country's population remains unconnected. And this 19% is almost entirely related to rural areas. Of course, the argument, that mobile operators make, which is very valid, is that, the cost incurred significantly outweighs the potential returns from providing digital services in areas that are sparsely population is sparsely dispersed, and there's really very low demand for these services. There's a government agency, the Universal Communications Service Access Fund, that was set up to identify the most underserved areas in the country and to provide subsidies to mobile operators to help reduce a portion of the capital expenditure required to deploy network infrastructure in rural regions. But what we see that, despite the work that UCSAF has done, these arrangements is still not sustainable, particularly because funding is really minimal for UCSAF, and there's still a lot of ground to cover in terms of number of rural communities that still remain underserved. Now, if we take a look at the national, like a more national picture, so just moving away a bit from the rural divide, while connectivity is still a major concern for rural populations at the national level, a more worrying trend is the underutilization of existing infrastructure. So for example, looking at the boxes in bright red, still on figure 5, we can see that the population of the proportion of the population that are covered or have access to a mobile broadband, but not connected or using mobile internet services has doubled within the past 5 years. So you see, as at 2017, only 27% of the population had access but wasn't using. But now there has been, since the coverage gap has been reducing, we see that the usage gap has been increasing, meaning people have access to these services, but they are not using. And what this, implies that, potential users face critical barriers to digital adoption, and these barriers need to be addressed. So what are the major barriers to digital adoption in the country? When we look at figure 6, we see that the high cost of internet-enabled devices and low levels of digital literacy top on the list. So on the issue of affordability, figure 7 shows the average cost of mobile devices. And what it depicts is that, these devices or internet-enabled devices remain out of reach for most Tanzanians, in relation to the average earnings in the country or average income levels. And of course, once we talk about the issue of affordability, we also think about the most vulnerable people. So people living in rural communities, how, what kind of financial autonomy do they have? Of course, we also think about groups like women. Women tend to be disproportionately affected by these high costs, as they're more likely to have lower incomes and often lack autonomy within the household, financial autonomy within the household. Data from the TCRA suggests that only about 27% of Tanzanians own a smartphone, as majority of cheaper mobile phones used in the country are not enabled for internet use. Again, there's the issue of taxes and levies on mobile transactions and devices. And this also tends to push affordability further out of reach for poorer users, particularly in rural communities that even have some kind of connection. Right, so just taking a further look on the issue of taxation. So we see both figures here show at a very quick glance, show the heavy tax burden imposed on the mobile sector, and so if we take a look at figure 9, and you compare, mobile sector specific taxes, compare it with what obtains in other regions or even within the African region, you see that Tanzania is quite high. And on the right, figure 10 kind of separates it into the different tax types. And you see that, tax burden imposed is mainly attributable to high excise duties on mobile services. Now, of course, these costs ultimately affect affordability of mobile services because, the costs have to be cascaded down to the consumers of these services, right? And, another thing we also observe is, the introduction of levies in 2021, what that did in terms of, or how that affected the volume and value of mobile money transactions during the period. So between June and September 2021, our colleagues in the African policy team, they did a survey and did an estimate, and what they found out is that the total volume of peer-to-peer mobile money transactions dipped by 38% between June and September 2021 as a result of new levies introduced on mobile money transfers. Of course, we know a lot has happened between then and now in terms of just reducing and making some adjustments to those levies. Right. So the second barrier, apart from the issue of affordability, is inadequate digital skills. And this is particularly evident at the MSME level. So at the enterprise level, what we found out is that local small businesses, particularly those in the informal sector, really struggle to adopt digital technologies in a productive manner that adds value to the digital economy. So we made reference to a 2019 poll, from one of the universities in the country that showed that 41% of Tanzanian companies identified a digital skills gap as a major constraint to their level of competitiveness. We did find out, though, that there's a lot of willingness in the ecosystem and interest to foster innovation and tech entrepreneurship skills in the country, through accelerator programs and other capacity development programs. But one thing we discovered is that these programs are mostly concentrated in just a few urban locations. So if you take a look at figure 12 on your right, you see, 72% of these programs are domiciled in Dar, then, Arusha and some of these other more urban areas. But by the time we look at the more rural communities, how are they able to really participate and benefit from some of these programs? That's definitely a challenge so far. Another thing that we discovered is that most of the startup programs also seem to only be able to provide support up to the ideation stage, or what we call like the pre-revenue stage. But such innovations are not always able to scale up, as entrepreneurs often struggle to implement sustainable business models afterwards. So it's definitely obvious that, small businesses within these rural communities, and even some of them within urban areas, that they still require significant support and investment to leverage these technologies to be able to contribute to the growth of the productive sector of the economy. Right, so we've talked about, some of the challenges. So really, what actions are required, what needs to be done to be able to make some progress and, fast track digital uptake in the country. Considering the issues that we've highlighted, the actions and potential areas for support that need to be prioritized for faster digital inclusion, include actions, that one, improve demand for digital services in rural areas. So the truth is, as much as we think about some of the solutions, such as, okay, maybe there's room to provide subsidies for some of these mobile devices, maybe there's room to provide subsidies to the mobile operators to help, reduce the capital expenditure. Some of these things in the long run, they're more short-term solutions than than long-term solutions. If the demand is not there, even when they do set up, and eventually the business model isn't profitable, it just doesn't work in the end. So it's definitely need to think about how to, induce more demand-driven initiatives to be able to fast-track uptake. We also need to think about, of course, things like improving affordability, of digital tools and services. One of the ways to help to improve affordability is kind of review the tax system, make sure that it doesn't have some kind of conflicting outcomes that affects the more or the broader digitalization agenda in the country. There's definitely room for interventions that enhance digital skills for both in the formal education system and for more informal entrepreneurs. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. Then, of course, having a very clear digital policy roadmap, that is comprehensive and concise and is well embedded within the broader national development plan and properly coordinated and implemented, that definitely is required, particularly to make sure that no one is left behind, and it's not like certain groups are able to leverage these benefits of digital technologies at the expense of others. Another thing that we've observed as well is that, so for some of the donor funding that's coming in, the trend has been mostly has been mostly that the funds kind of just go majorly to government programs. So we think that there's definitely room, to support local civil society organizations and NGOs that have that can have and improve real grassroots impact, or even partnerships with them, just because they kind of know the local landscape on ground. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. I probably will leave the slide here for a bit until the next session, but just some of the things we're thinking about, and we hope that they're feasible and if implemented properly, can improve digital uptake, particularly in rural communities. Thank you for listening. I'll hand over back to you, Janet.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly interesting. Just a quick question from me. You mentioned the need for digital literacy programs. I wondered if you had come across any particularly successful ones in your research.
Right. So there are a couple of literacy programs. So even just awareness programs that are online. There's this, I hope I pronounce it right, digital program that the government, ICTC, I think, is sponsoring, just to make like women and some vulnerable groups aware of online safety issues and all that, and how to use the internet. There are a couple of these schemes. I think it's just more about how to better coordinate it, and also make it almost segmented, because there are different groups within the country, and these different groups, have different needs, as it were, to be able to go, and are different stages of digital maturity, to be able to actually leverage these services.
Thank you. Yes, we've done a bit of work with Digital Opportunities Trust that is working with entrepreneurs in many different regions that seem to be doing great work. Please do keep the questions coming in the chat. I'm going to hand over now to Nazar. Nazar Nicholas, from the President of the Internet Society, for his response.
Oh, thank you, Janet, and thank you, Son. Is it Son?
I hope that's fine.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for the for going through the report and what you did on the research side of things. I think from the NGO perspective, we have come a long way to where we are. If we are to talk about the digital journey of Tanzania. I remember when I was in secondary school, there was only like a huge computer at the Muhimbile University, where you could just go and actually type your whatever you want to send as an email, and somebody will type it for you to go if you want to send it to Europe or elsewhere. So I think we've come a long way, and this report is a testimony of what is actually happening. And we are very glad to have the ministry that is actually responding to some of these challenges. For example, if you look at the Digital Tanzania program, which basically has several components. For example, there is the digital ecosystem, which seeks, to create enabling environment to allow the productive use of ICT in Tanzania. And really, if you look at it, it's the enabling environment and the critical areas that it is working on is very fundamental to address some of these challenges that have been raised in the Sony report, the GSMA report. For example, you will see on this component, the ministry has the ICT policy, regulatory and physical reforms and implementation. Number one. Number two, there is the cybersecurity, privacy protection, and data exchange. Number three, digital youth development and ICT industry development. So you will see as you know, the challenges that have been raised by the report. On the other hand, is also the government. I'm not holding a brief for the government of Tanzania, but I'm just trying to go through what is happening on the ground, and you will see the components of Digital Tanzania program actually addresses some of these challenges. And as you know, the digital sector, or if I may say ICT sector, changes very rapidly. But the issue of digitization and digitalization of the masses actually remains a challenge, because you are talking about the population that has about 65 million plus people. If you may say it is 62 million people, and it is a vast land. So if you were to expand the fiber optic, which the government is working on, with about 8,000 kilometers of fiber already on the ground, and again they are investing on 4,000 kilometers. So the vastness of the country also is a challenge in terms of how much government can really invest. So I believe having the good people that we have in the ministry right now, we have a very how do I put it? The permanent secretary of the ministry is a very good guy, and he's actually taking these issues on infrastructure and digitization and digitalization hands-on, and probably we have a better digital Tanzania ahead if we continue, and if the government continues in this trajectory. On the other hand, we have people like us, the Internet Society Tanzania chapter, and some other folks on the ground, like the African Child Project. We are actually doing our bit to assist on the issue of creating closing the digital gap in Tanzania. For example, Internet Society is actually implementing a huge project called Tanzania Digital Inclusion Project, which is basically a 10-year project with the objectives to with the 4 objectives basically. Trying to connect about 4 million citizens, of course, including the schools, connectivity, the schools to the broadband connectivity. And we're very glad to be partner of the Basic Internet Foundation to connect all these schools in Tanzania. And number 2, we are trying to provide digital skills or digital education to about 1.5 million young people, women, and teachers. Essential digital skills like, for example, digital security or digital marketing for women who are entrepreneurs, young people to branch into different categories. For example, there is a course that we are doing on digital innovation, how they can be able to identify what they are good at, go into the several stages of innovation. And also the objective number 3 is basically to create around 200 community digital innovation hubs, throughout Tanzania, where young people can get a space for innovation. We can use the same kind of innovation hubs, to connect to schools and communities and forgot, and people who have been forgotten in terms of connectivities, like the police stations, the lowest units of government in Tanzania, known as mtaa and ward offices. So those are the interventions that as the civil society, technical community, we are trying to do on the ground to address some of these challenges. I know trying to connect all people or having a level of penetration that is required for Tanzania is a challenge, but every single individual who is involved in this movement, if and when they do their bit, I think we shall be able to eventually, connect everyone to the broadband internet in Tanzania. But it will take time and effort, of course. Probably, if I can pause for a minute so that I don't eat so much of other co-presenters' time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if you can put any relevant links into the chat, that would be fantastic. And I will circulate the links with the recording. So next, can I call upon Mr. Commando from Vodacom to talk about what they and other mobile providers are doing to advance this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for this, for the organizing, Janet and the team. Thank you, Son, for such a wonderful report from GSMA. You are really getting us at a stage whereby people are able to understand what are we doing and what are really work behind the operators. Again, thank you, my brother Nazar. It is again really awesome meeting you. The last time we were, I think, in Zanzibar during one of the workshop. So I'm supposed to tell or to talk about the role of mobile operators on addressing this digital divide when it comes to the digitalization journey in Tanzania, being a case study. So I think for us it's so simple. And I think, I don't know, because of what is being built with our DNA, Vodacom being a Vodafone company is a purpose-led organization, whereby we believe in 3 pillars, and those pillars are the fundamental driving even today's agenda. We believe in digital society. And what do I mean when I say digital society? I mean that is connectivity, platform, and content. Now, connectivity is the infrastructure. So we believe on building a very reliable network of all possible technologies to ensure that customers, they are able to access not only data and voice, but also other businesses or other services beyond the connectivity. We believe on local content by ensuring that we create use cases that are addressing demand for the particular society. In this case is in Tanzania. And we believe on inclusion for all, whereby in whatever we do, we consider all types of customers, irrespective of the area or gender, to mention a few. So you will find out that even in our offerings or in our services, we have even services for those disadvantaged group, if I say so, for the lack of better term, the likes of people with disabilities. We have solutions to address those challenges. So in whatever we do, from designing a sector, we consider all type of customers. And of course, we address inclusion when it comes to finance, etc. So our mobile solution has really been helping the government and the society in general by bridging the gap on financial sector. And we all do these initiatives by not really endangering our planet. So our last pillar is on planet, and Vodafone is one of the very serious companies when it comes to ESG. We've won several awards. We've been in all the COP meetings, whether in Africa or in the world, and we have been pledging specific areas to address either connectivity or industry matters when it comes to climate change, etc. So having said that, in terms of what is our really fundamental pillars for the purpose-led organization, if you double click for Tanzania, it's very straightforward that our vision is so simple. Vodacom Tanzania is here to lead Tanzania into digital age and to change life through technology. Now, you cannot do that if you don't empower Tanzanians, you don't provide solutions that really address the challenges. So for us, we've been trying to come up with several initiatives that goes hand in hand with our offerings or with our solutions, which are not only on voice, data, mobile money, but we do also have solutions beyond connectivity. And we've got a couple of programs that are addressing digital literacy, as well as the smartphone penetration as a barrier to digital inclusion. So when it comes to device, we've been partnering with industrial leaders, OEMs, when it comes to that area, whereby you're being able to lower the price at less than $20, up to 40,000 Tanzania shillings, as an entry level on a smartphone for our customers to enjoy and have the taste and the feel of the services that are within the internet and smartphone in general. But over and above that, we've also initiated several programs which is addressing innovation as well as women in technology. So we have a program called Like a Girl that is, I think, 4 years now, where we have partnered with D-Lab and the University of Dar es Salaam, and we've been training girls at the age of 14 to 18 in Tanzania for 4 years, and as of now, we've already trained over 1,600 girls, and these girls are not coming from Dar es Salaam only, but other regions, the likes of Mbeya and Dodoma, to mention a few, and they're coming from those ward schools, not these high-end schools that they've got everything, and there will be no need for them really to be taken into the coding training, etc. Why do we do this? It's because of we believe that we are a purpose-led organization, and we have to empower the society. And for sure, we selected girls because of the fact that most girls in Tanzania are shying away from the science subject, so-called STEM subject. And for us, we thought by introducing to them to this kind of program, it will really help to get that fear away. And we've seen that because of the testimonials and the kind of students that we've been training and graduating from our programs. We will continue doing so. And we won't end there, because we believe that even those who are coming from different universities in Dar es Salaam, they need also some support, whether they're on the innovation space or normal career space. So we have also two programs that are addressing those who are coming from universities. One program is called Vodacom Graduate Trainee Program, whereby each year we've been onboarding over 17 up to 20 students from different faculties with the objective of training them and absorbing them as part of the Vodacom family. And I'm really glad being one of the beneficiary of this program. 80% of my team are Gen Z that are really graduates from this program, and they are really doing well. And I really encourage other corporate companies really to copy what Vodacom is doing, because we will really make a difference and we will address unemployment as well as digital literacy. Over and above that, Vodacom also plays a great role when it comes to innovation in this country. We've been working together with the government, COSTECH, and the ICT Commission on addressing the challenges that entrepreneurs and the young startups are facing. So since 2019, we started our program. It's called Vodacom Digital Accelerator, whereby we've been assisting and helping innovators to really cover the gaps and transform them to be able to compete with the other startups within the world, not only in Africa. And our cohort 1 had very good results. As I speak now, we are ending cohort 2. Next week will be really the end of cohort 2, and we'll see how good the winners and the entire team will be. But I'm very confident that cohort 2 is much better than cohort 1. Though even cohort 1 had very, very great individuals and the startups, which really will really create more employment to others, and of course bring more economic advantage to Tanzania. To mention a few from cohort 1, some of the winners, they were even ahead of the game when it comes to the famous Google Accelerator Program for Africa. One graduate from our program also won that accelerator program, and they've been really getting a couple of venture capitals, seed funding from investors all over the world, simply because we've been really helping them to really not only use our brand, but also to show off what they got from the program. So I think for now I can end there, but all in all is that Vodacom, we believe that technology without human is nothing. And we need to get human to use the technology, and they will be continuing leading by introducing the newest and the fastest technology in Tanzania, so that no one will be left behind. So we launched 5G September last year, and we saw one of the showstopper was affordability of devices. We addressed that only by introducing special routers that people will enjoy 5G using their existing smartphone by hooking to those routers via Wi-Fi. So we've been really trying to address the challenges, and for sure, one of the things that is really that keeps me awake is what Son shared earlier, the growth of usage gap, because as we keep investing, we've been really covering the gap on coverage, but the usage is not growing as our investment. Hence, creates more pressure for us in terms of profitability and the return of investment, because we have network there, but it's empty because people cannot use it due to the reason that Sonia already shared, and I won't be kind if I repeat the same for the sake of time. So I'll be ready for questions, And really, thank you very much, Janet and Sonny. I'm really enjoying the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you can put any relevant links in the chat, that would be fantastic. And if people have questions, please do put them in the chat. So next on is Joseph Knoll from Basic Internet Foundation. Welcome, Joseph. Joseph, can you unmute yourself? Apologies, Joseph. You should be able to speak now.
All right, and that also means that I can open my camera for this. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased with the discussion, because I really see that the discussion is about collaboration, and that is also some what you pointed out in your paper. I hope that you see. Let me just send you a link to a paper which I would love to bring out, and then I just want to jump on one point here. Don't know why he. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now.
It says you've started screen sharing.
And then it says, yeah, my screen, your screen sharing is paused. I don't understand that. But maybe you can, Janet, maybe you can just jump in, take over, open the link and show it to us. Because what I want to shortly address is that when we look into the history of the internet, then the internet was built from the DARPANET by universities. And what we now currently see is that universities are still the competence drivers for the change. And I'm so happy having the collaboration with the Dar es Salaam Institute for Technology, with UDSM, with the University of Dodoma, with now in the north, the Arusha Technology Center, to actually see how can we help in empowering the society and making connectivity out. And I'd love to your last input, Kambo, from the network isn't used. That is exactly the point where we want to jump on. So the first one is here on the public responsibility. If you just scroll to the figure on page 4, because like everyone can go through the paper, and I don't want to repeat papers. I just want to point out a position that drawing there. Yeah, there is definitely the understanding of like the collaboration between European universities, African universities, within the universities in Tanzania and the research institutes, is that we need to build up the competence for empowerment, because we need to bring people up. And some of the components which you already addressed earlier is like, how can we empower the national research and education networks to actually contribute to our goal of connecting schools? And that is one of the suggestions which we last time discussed when I was in Tanzania with several actors, like, why don't we bring a 4G, 5G base station on top of a university tower, and from there on connect via the multi-MIMO to the schools? That would both help the uptake of 5G services, and it will even further help to give decent connectivity out to schools. So what I'm saying is, the collaborative approach of building the competence at schools, at research centers, the practical work in helping Nassar and the Internet Foundation, and Catherine with her wonderful African Child projects, and Jeanette with her initiatives to connect the schools and make the schools as the empowerment. Because what we often see is that the commercial way will run its own way. The Bollywood, the Premier League, the things which make money But if we then look for what is the non-commercial part, what is the education, what are the governmental services, what is health education, that one needs a different thinking. And that different thinking needs this collaborative approach. I stop here. We are working with, amongst others, the Africa Connect 4 to get examples out, and I hope that we can also start such a project in Tanzania. And I really love, Sone, to invite you to join us here and say, how can GSMA make that one as an example of empowerment for non-profitable services? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joseph. And now Catherine, also from Basic Internet Foundation and Africa Child Projects. Welcome.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll turn on my video for a short introduction minute. So hello, I am Catherine Richard Kimambo, the founder of African Child Projects. I also work with Basic Internet Foundation as their community manager. So what we do at African Child Projects, we conduct connectivity projects in rural areas. So I will tie that in relation to Sone's report. So the whole purpose of the school connectivity project was born after we saw the need for a multi-stakeholder engagement. I think Joseph has shed some light on that. Previously, you'd have misallocation of funds. You'd have, like, there are schools that don't have electricity and then they receive computers. And then you'd have schools that have no ICT teachers, they get connectivity and the like. So what I observed and what made me, love the report even more was when Sone, I think, spoke about the duplication of efforts, or the siloed initiatives, as she mentioned. I think we observed this, the siloed initiatives in the lack of coordination when it comes to donor-funded programs. So you'd see at the end of the day, you have a lot of efforts that are being duplicated by different initiatives, or you have a lot of investment that is made in the same areas. So you meet like a school that is connected by more than one, or different, initiatives that are going to connect the same schools. So when we were going for the phase 3 of the school connectivity project, we did a feasibility study. So in the feasibility study, we had something like 500 schools, where in the 500 schools, we visited all of them physically. And in our observation, we saw that 100 out of the 500 schools were connected more than once, and they received different types of donations from different, funders and donors. So in our mind, we are thinking, what is the challenge? Because you're having the same schools getting connected over and over again, and then you have schools that are really in need of connection, not receiving that type of donation. And so we came to find out that the biggest, I think, setback is in the terms of sustainability. All these efforts, I think it's more on how do most people are focusing on how do they implement programs, and not focusing further on the sustainability of the programs that are pioneered. So in the school connectivity program, we made sure that how are we involving different stakeholders to make sure that there's no duplication of efforts. And also we wanted to make sure that apart from involving different stakeholders, how do we create value in the internet that is provided in the schools? Because as you're seeing in the previous slides by Sone, you'd have I think usage gap that was still very low in the places where there's 3G and 4G, but also in the skills, digital skills that is lacking to teachers and students. And so in answering to all these questions, we developed the 4 KPIs for school connectivity program that is answering to things like access, because we believed access is not the only challenge, but also involving things like digital skills, but also how do we make sure that devices are also available? Because at the end of the day, internet is available, but also devices could be, high in most places. And so as I was reading the report, I also noticed an area where you said the skills and awareness, and also Tanzania being, scoring 3.3 out of 10 in terms of digital skills awareness. But also that in regards to school connectivity, we've also observed that And we have been advocating for a change in curriculum in terms of the ICT curriculum. I think our discussion previously with Janet was always like, how is the digital, how is the ICT curriculum only based on the basics in terms of computer? How are we not advancing to go beyond just, this is computer assembly, these are the computer parts? How are we going beyond to seeing things that are really tangible in terms of multimedia? How do we involve students in programs that are really effective for them to use ICT and see value in the use of ICT? But also, I think it's also a policy questions in regards to digital skills or ICT subjects being regarded as still optional in most schools. So here you have a future that you're creating where you cannot avoid ICT in any sector whatsoever. But then again, you have the children or the schools, this subject being treated as still optional in most of the schools. So it's still a policy questions where you have different government offices or government initiatives not speaking to one another. But also then again, you have different programs that are still pioneered and there's no sustainability plan or exit plans whatsoever. And there's no project ownership in terms of the programs that are pioneered. So you have donors donating from end to end of the program, and the teachers or the beneficiaries do not feel the ownership of the program. So as soon as the donors exit, you still have in that dependency type of thinking that, okay, another donor will come, we'll still get donations. So we're trying so hard to see how sustainability can be integral in this program in terms of how are we communicating that there is more to be done in terms of connectivity, but also what has been done, how are we sustaining that, making sure that in the years to come, maybe let's say 10 to 20 years, we can still see the fruits of the investment that is still made now, and that is still progressing in the later years and not dying as soon as we exit most of the program. So in regards to time, I think I'll end there. And if there are questions, I would love to address.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Yes, absolutely. Sustainability is so vital. We all know of some of the projects that you're alluding to that didn't last long. I know we're out of time, so I'd like to thank all of the speakers, particularly Soné. If people have any very quick questions, put them in the chat now. Otherwise, thank you for everyone's time. Let's keep on the collaboration and the discussion. I will circulate the recording and the links to people who registered. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank you
you're
very much.
concluding